Daily Review on News Talk 580 CFRA.
Here's an encore segment from Ottawa at Work with Patricia Bull.
This is the kind of forecast that you would absolutely hate if you're at one of the areas in our country at risk of wildfires for the most part. This summer, anyway, our main concern has been when the smoke drifts and we have a hazy day when we'd like to have a sunny day. Obviously, the concern is far greater in many parts of the country. Newfoundland, one of the areas where really significant wildfire there has grown substantially over the last 24 hours. Having a daughter in Northwest Territories, I'm always watching what is happening there. A couple of years ago, that was a really, really significant fire situation. BC, all across the prairies. It's a big country. And increasingly, it seems we're seeing these terrible wildfire seasons. So are we responding in the right way, or is there a better way, perhaps, to be dealing with what we're facing in Canada? A national wildfire agency, perhaps. Ken McMullen is joining us on the line, president of the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, and also actively working out in Red Deer, Alberta. Good morning to you, Ken.
Well, good morning.
So tell me about Alberta, first of all, so far this year, and wildfires. As soon as I start talking about wildfires, what comes to your mind?
Well, certainly we continue to see a very, very active, volatile wildfire season all across Canada. In comparison to some of the other provinces and territories, Alberta has not seen quite the same wildfire activity that we have seen in 23 and 24. It's not to say it's not occurring in Alberta, but I think that, as you mentioned, some of the other provinces and territories, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, Newfoundland, are seeing not only more wildfire activity, but they're certainly seeing the activity of the threat to property occurring.
I mean, the devastation is always tough to watch, and any time that towns are close enough that they have to be evacuated because of wildfires, it's awful to see and how people's lives are disrupted. But I don't know if anything quite captured the imagination of people across the country like the Jasper situation did in particular, and certainly the wildfire discussion has been a very active one in the couple of years, in these last couple of years, and certainly since that time. What is the discussion that's happening at a higher level? People actually know about responding to these fires and how we have to call people in from elsewhere and sort of piece it together case by case. What is the discussion that's kind of happening at a higher level?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think that it's important to remember for you and your listeners that in Canada, there are two distinct different types of wildfire responses. You've got your response from wildland firefighters, and then you've got your response from municipal firefighters. And there's a distinct difference, and the reason I share that is because other parts of the world, those roles are interchangeable. But in Canada, we've got our colleagues in wildland firefighting, those individuals that work for the provinces and territories that have the training, expertise, and equipment for wildland firefighting. What our organization, the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, we work with municipal firefighters, the men and women who are days typically respond to calls in municipalities with structures and those calls that you're used to having in your communities. Now, what we see is the more reliance on those two groups to work together in a coordinated response for the times that the fire is leaving the treat areas and coming in to threaten or impacting structures along the way. That is where we're seeing and we're calling for the creation of a national fire administration to help with the coordination and response of the municipal assets across Canada.
Okay, so how would that work exactly? It would make it easier if you have to call in reinforcement from elsewhere. Someone would have tabs on sort of the numbers and how often you're doing that.
That would absolutely be one of the roles. And I think that if we use the example of our colleagues in wildland firefighting, they've got a very, very robust system through CFRA, the Interagency Forest Firefighting Center. They've got well-established protocols in place to get resources from provinces and territories back and forth. And in fact, they've got processes to get firefighters from the other part of the world to come to Canada to help. On the municipal side, we do not have that. That would be one of the roles of a National Fire Administration.
I mean, inevitably, this is going to be a situation where you share resources, right? And we've seen Canadian firefighters go down to parts of the States, California, to help out in those situations. You can't staff adequately in every area for what might or might not come. It's always going to be something where you have to mobilize resources.
100% correct. The reality is there will never be enough firefighters to put out the types of fires we're seeing across this country. So what we need to do is better utilize the coordination efforts of those that we do have available every single day.
Where do we stand when it comes to equipment and having the aerial attack often necessary to stop these fires before they worsen? Do we need to be spending more money on this as a country?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair question. It's important to remember that when we're talking about water bombers, those are not types of equipment that municipal fire departments run. Those are the types of equipment that our provinces and territories, typically through our wildfire colleagues, they have that equipment. I'm sure that they're going to tell you that there isn't enough. It's one of those things that supply, demand, do we ever have enough to put out these types of fires? No, but there needs to be a better coordination effort.
Why do you think we're seeing increasing numbers of wildfires in the past few years?
You know, we often get asked this question, and I'm not here to debate whether or not climate change is happening or not, but what I can share with you from the data is that we're certainly seeing an increase of responses to weather-related events, not just extreme heat that you're seeing in your province right now, but we're seeing an increase of floods, increase of wildfires, increase of heat-related calls, as well as extreme cold-related calls. So we're certainly adapting to a changing environment.
So are you satisfied with how active the conversation is around this situation? Do you think you're getting the right kind of response from the federal level about maybe moving forward with some increased coordination?
We will continue to work with all parties within the government. And I know that very recently there was a meeting of ministers responsible for emergency management. They've indicated that they're interested to continue in the conversation. We're there. We'll be at any table. We'll continue to write letters. More needs to be done. That goes without saying. And until that's done, you're not going to stop me from continuing this advocacy.
And, you know, given the situations are so very different in terms of the fires that you mentioned that happen in cities and towns involving structures versus the 2 or 3 pronged attack used to battle back a wildfire, is the training fully adequate? Do firefighters, even who are working in municipalities, need more of that second type of training?
Yeah, we absolutely are aware that training has to be a component of this. The typical response for a municipal firefighter day to day up until 5 or 6 years ago was not the type of calls that we're responding to now in that geographical area that's called the wildland-urban interface. And again, that's that area where the fire is leaving the treat areas and coming in to threaten properties or impact structures within towns and cities. So we know, again, one of the roles of that National Fire Administration will be looking at consistent training and advocating for funds. There are 124,000 firefighters in this country made up of career, composite, and volunteer. About 87,000 of those individuals are volunteer. Men and women that aren't doing this as their full-time career, they're individuals that are giving back to their community. We need to support them, and we need to ensure that they've got the right training for all responses. But as we continue to evolve and having more responses in the wildland-urban interface, we have to pay attention to that from a training perspective.
Here we are midway through August and what has been obviously a very difficult wildfire season in parts of the country. What do you anticipate in terms of what you're hearing nationally? When does the wildfire season really taper off in Canada? Is it going to be a tough fall as well?
It's certainly going to be a tough fall. There's no doubt about that. In fact, many people don't realize there will be fires that will burn all winter long, and they'll just get crusted underneath the snow and the ice, but they will continue. But the threat to our communities are going to continue throughout the month of August, likely into September and early October. We need to be prepared, and I think that my last message would be to those listeners, do what you can. Understand how to reduce the risk within your own properties. You can follow the Fire Smart principles in and around your property to reduce the risks. But then furthermore, as we heard about the evacuees within our communities, let's plan for that. Let's have our important documents ready, and let's have the conversation with our children and loved ones about what would we do in the event of an evacuation. Now's the time to have that conversation.
Excellent point, Ken. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Always a pleasure being on your show. You and your listeners, stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Ken McMullen, president of the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, also the fire chief in Red Deer, Alberta.
We'll